Dan Hurley is getting recruits that he wants at a time where it's never been more difficult to do it. Let's talk about it. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe and follow wherever you listen to your audio versions, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever it is. It really helps the show grow. I genuinely appreciate your support. Every follow, subscription, download not only helps build our UConn community, but also generates more revenue for UConn NIL initiatives. And there's something else that we're super excited about. I'm donating 10% of all revenue to Husky Ticket Project. Husky Ticket Project just had their biggest moment of purchasing 814 tickets to this week's game against Wake Forest. Super proud to be a partner with them. It helps send kids to games and makes a real difference. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me and for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Okay, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place the first $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's bring in our guest of honor here, Jake Weingarten from Stockrisers. Let's get you in here. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Good, man. How you doing today?
We're doing great. Thank you for jumping on a live mini pod. Obviously, Eric Reibe signs with UConn. I'm gonna read a tweet or I think it's a tweet from you. It can't go unnoticed the type of character UConn is getting as with Reibe, and watching Reibe over the last 2+ years, covering him. He handles himself like a true professional. Can understand the attraction between both sides, Reibe and UConn. Perfect match. Can you explain how this came about, but also in context of your tweet?
First of all, I mean, it's beyond me that I had fans actually in my DM saying, how could you say that about a kid that cursed in his commitment speech? I love that. I absolutely love that. And just to kind of go, a little deep dive on Eric, I first started covering him 2 years ago, like I mentioned, and just from day one, just handled everything with class. Like in this industry, everyone wants your information, wants to know where you're going, who offers you. But, when you get to build a relationship with the kid, it's kind of different. And obviously, families from Germany, kind of new to the States. He's got a great mentor in Rodney Rice, who I'm very familiar with. And, he just handled everything with class. And, I'm not that much older. I'm only 23. So to see a kid handle things, how he has, and just the way he handles himself and speaks to people, he's very classy, and, his work ethics, unmatched. And I can see why, Coach Hurley would like a kid like that. Obviously, he's an elite level talent, and he'll skyrocket at UConn, but, just off the court, he's a kid, you're not going to have to worry about.
For sure. It seems like that. It seems like he's pretty well-spoken outside of him dropping F-boms in live shows, which honestly has made him a cult hero for UConn fans, because as you may know, Dan Hurley likes to use colorful language, and I feel like that's a fit here. So yeah, the fans love it. I love it. I even messaged with Eric and I said LFG, man, and he wrote it back. Let's go with all caps. So this kid's ready to rock. So I'm super excited. So talk to me a little bit about his game. I know it's been gone over. We're almost like beating a dead horse right now. But this kid he's rare, man. He's the rare center in college that can not only be a post presence, but can work in pick and roll, in all of the action and the motions, in what UConn likes to do from an offensive perspective. I feel like that's also why he's a perfect fit. Not forget about it, but also in his character, this kid can really kind of initiate offense with the ball and off the ball.
Yeah, very special talent. I have a unique NBA comparison for him. He kind of gives me like a Porzingis vibe. 7-footer, smooth stroke, can shoot on all three levels. very multidimensional. You know, obviously we'll get to Niko Bundalo, but, you know, people have asked, like, can those two match together? Can they, you know, be on the court at the same time? If it were to happen, they can. And that's a testament to, you know, Eric being able to move around and actually be mobile. He's not your normal center. But if you look at the game of basketball the last 10 years, it's very positionless at some points. And, you know, you look at the modern day, like unicorn, gazelle type of prospect, and he has the potential to be that. High motor, very talented on the offensive end. He's long, athletic. Obviously, he can get a little stronger, and he'll do that at UConn. But, you know, he's just on both ends of the court. You know, he's a threat, you know, and he could defend at the perimeter. He could play anywhere on the court. Obviously, you're not going to see him play point guard, but, you know, he's capable of being around the perimeter, and he's a very special talent. I think he's underranked, and he's someone that, you know, I think will keep rising in the rankings, but, you know, two-way threat and somebody that, you know, I think will only get better at UConn.
For sure. You mentioned Niko Bundalo. Let's go there. I've heard from a couple different people that, you know, because of the commitment from Eric, that UConn will kind of back off of Niko. Is that true, or is that, or where are we on that?
You know, I thought that too at first. You know, I heard a lot of UNC, a little bit of Michigan State. But to be honest, I think him and Reibe can, you know, be on the court together. Like I just mentioned, you know, Niko, you know, I actually view him more of a wing rather than a four. But like I said, it's very positionless nowadays. But, you know, with Eric being the guy he is, and, you know, obviously it would be difficult to have both of them playing the perimeter and, you know, taking the outside shot and being around the perimeter at the same time. But I really think they would be able to mesh together. I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, UConn's getting him, but, you know, I did feel that way at first, that it would be hard to have them two together, but I wouldn't count it out just yet. And I'm not saying that because I have some sort of info. I'm saying just more from a basketball standpoint. You
Sure.
know, it is realistic to have them two together at the same time.
And I think people don't realize, too, next year the rosters expand to 15. So if UConn loses, I don't know, 5-6 guys this year from a team, there's a potential where I've talked about a super class. I don't mean it like we're all these different 5-stars. I mean, what makes sense for them, but they could also be adding players that traditionally they probably wouldn't, because they have an extra roster spot as well, and try to help them develop. Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's talk about Darius Adams already in the fold. Braylon Mullins is making his decision next week, and what that all means with Jake Weingarten coming up after this. Quick break. We're back just like that. It's a live show. FanDuel, you'll get your plugs during my 12:30 show. So we'll take a break from that. All right, man. Listen, Darius Adams already in the fold, 6'5", smooth combo guard. What does he bring to UConn, and what do you see with him and Reibe as a combination for the 25-26 season?
You know, he's an improving shooter. I think obviously people look at like the EYBL splits and just his shooting percentages and get kind of worried from that aspect, but I wouldn't if I'm a UConn fan. You know, I think he's still developing as a shooter, but, you know, he's going to go out there and give you 15 to 20 points a game, at least on the high school level he did. And I think his scoring will translate. I think the most important thing for him is he's physically ready to play in the Big East and play at a national scale. He's very well built, you know, physically, like I said, and, you know, to be able to defend at a high level is very important. And I think that's something he'll thrive on. But, you know, more importantly, being able to get to the rim and rely on the guys around you, I think that's something he's good at. You know, he's played around some very talented guys. And, you know, like I said on your last show, if you're able to thrive with, you know, good talent around you, you know, your potential will skyrocket. And, you know, he's a guy that gives me that vibe. You know, physically, but, you know, obviously on the offensive end, I also think he's continuing to improve, and, you know, I think he'll do that at UConn.
Sounds good, man. I'm excited about him. If all you have to do is look into his history, into his family history. Two sisters playing at the high D1 level. His dad was an AAU coach in New Jersey, grassroots level. That's got to make Kamani and Dan excited to have that kind of New Jersey blood coming into UConn. So I think I'm excited about Darius and his prospects. let's move to another guard that's been hotly talked about on our show and others across the country. Braylon Mullins. He is a 5-star, another smooth shooter that I think would fit into this Dan Hurley system effortlessly. What have you heard? From my side of the aisle, I've heard that it's. I hate to use, because we're a locked on show, I hate to use the word lock, but I would tell you that I've heard that it's looking better than it was even when people started talking about Braylon to UConn.
Yeah, you got some pretty good sources. It is sounding, pretty good for UConn. The last I've heard a lot. I'll give, a pretty good deep dive on what I've heard. I've heard a lot of UConn,
Please.
but at the same time, I've heard it's been a lot of UConn or Indiana.
Yeah.
And I could see why that could be. Like I said last time, Indiana is not only the hometown school, but Coach Woodson's always been a threat in this recruitment. But I do ideally see him at UConn, and I'm not saying that because that's, the popular thing to say in public right now. But, I think when you look at it from, a business perspective and, just getting to the NBA, and that's not a knock to Indiana. They have an amazing staff. They've produced draft picks over the last 2-3 years, but, Braylon could go anywhere he wants and fit in perfectly. Like I told you, it's not easy to get an athletic shooter with the talent that Braylon has. And to have that at a championship contender, back-to-back champions, and could be 3 in a row by the time he gets there, who knows? But
Yeah.
to go in and be able to have a chance to be a one and done and, be a scorer like him where he'll be able to come in, start, and he'll be able to give you 15, 20 points a night. You couldn't ask for more as a recruit. Would he be able to do that at Indiana? Probably. But, to have the chance to do that while being a potential lottery pick and winning a national championship, if I was a recruit with that talent, it would be hard to say no to that.
It's a great point. What do you say? Like, have you heard any of this stuff too? Because I've heard a little bit of this that's happening on the trail. When the negative to going to UConn is they don't have room for you. Like you're not gonna, they already have XYZ players in the fold. This year they have not only Liam McNeely, but they have Ahmad Noel and Isaiah Abraham. They'll still be there. Liam probably not, but the other two definitely. What's been the counter argument for the folks that are essentially, telling guys like Braylon, telling guys like Eric, who eventually signed, that, hey, you don't want to go to UConn because you may not start, you may not get the minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's came up. One thing I heard early on, even around the Darius Adams commitment, was, this will impact Braylon. It won't be a good fit with the two of them, and I disagree with that. And the counter argument with that type of stuff is, you got to go in and earn it. And like we talked about last time, if you're not willing to go in and work your tail off to, earn a spot and be at a school like UConn, then it's not for you. And like I said, it's not for everybody. It really isn't. But a kid like Braylon, like I said, you can slot him at any school in the country, whether it's a UConn, a Duke, or even a mid-major, anywhere in America. A long athletic shooter like him, he could fit anywhere, possible. So that's the counter argument. If you're talented enough and you'll work hard enough, you'll make your way.
This is going to be a quick pod. So this is my last question for this, because I know you have stuff to do, and I wanted to just kind of touch base with you about some of this stuff. But I kind of feel like what you just said, and if that's what's being said to recruits that are on UConn's radar and that they're targeting, it really kind of goes to Dan Hurley's point about when teams or players tell on themselves. If that's what you come back with, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to have enough minutes, then they don't want you. Like, I'll just be honest. Like that's kind of the mentality that I feel like they have. Not that they don't want certain players, they probably still do, but it's one of those things where, if you went to an XYZ player and he was able to be kind of phased by that, then that's probably not the guy that's right for UConn. That's, that's not built for it.
Yeah, and in addition to that, and a point that people forget is NIL too. Schools aren't gonna pay you, X amount of money to go in and sit and watch. they're paying you to produce. That's ultimately how guys get paid. You get paid if you produce. And for high school guys, it's really, we're expecting you to come in. High school, it's expectations. And they'd be expecting a guy like Braylon to come in and do his thing. But, even for a guy who's a sophomore or junior or a transfer, if you're phased by minutes or you have any thoughts in the back of your mind, you can always think either A, you know, they think I'm built for it, so I should come in and work my tail off, or B, why would they pay me if they don't think I'm gonna produce? So I think nowadays when people say, you shouldn't go there because of fit or because of this guy, they're not gonna recruit you if they don't see a fit or if they don't see your value. So, I never understood that argument. But in Braylon's case, like I said, that kid could play anywhere. But, the argument at first was fit and who'd be around it, but I think that's an afterthought now.
No, you're spot on, and I'll just say this. I think for especially in the wake of Tony Bennett retiring, and there's a lot of old school coaches that are, and this is no knock against Tony Bennett. I think he's a great person. I wasn't enamored with the timing of it, but that's a story for another day. I think in the wake of guys like that retiring, old school guys, Dan Hurley has literally come out and said, we want ROI, like what you just said, return on investment. Like if we're going to stick our necks out for you and give you XYZ money to come play at UConn on the NIL front, we expect championships, and we expect to be you to be a part of that. So because we know the coaching staff is doing their part. Now it's the players kind of meeting that accountability. So that's what UConn's all about. And I really appreciate you jumping on for 15, 20 minutes here and shedding some light on this. I'm going to ask you one last thing before you go. I think he's coming. If it was happening today, just your opinion, not based off of your info. You've already told us what you've heard. Do you think Braylon is a Husky on October 23rd?
I do. I think he'd be a great fit under Coach Hurley, and like I said, I have high expectations for that kid. I think he's a future lottery pick, and I think he'll do that with Coach Hurley.
Love to hear it. Well, from your lips to God's ears, let's make that happen. This has been another episode of Locked on UConn, shorter version. Get a quick little live show with Jake, and we're just gonna wait and see what happens. Go Huskies!
Appreciate it.